And the manager just says, what's going on here? And this woman says, she won't let us sit down. We want to go to sit down. And I said, but Mr. Batten, that was his name, Batten. I said, it's Hitchcock. You know,
For most of her life, Carol Burnett was seen as the safest presence in American entertainment, a performer whose warmth felt genuine, whose laughter carried comfort, and whose public image suggested that resentment simply wasn't part of her emotional vocabulary. Audiences believed her kindness had no limits, that grace came naturally, that forgiveness was effortless, but time has a way of loosening truths people once kept sealed. In her later years, Carol quietly acknowledged that some wounds never disappeared. Certain moments, certain men left impressions so deep they reshaped how she moved through Hollywood forever. These were not petty disagreements or creative differences. They were experiences that stripped away dignity, twisted trust, or attempted to claim ownership over the work that defined her career. She never sought retaliation. She never raised her voice. She simply remembered, and she never forgot. Marlon Brando, the power that turned personal. Among all the names tied to her past, one carried a gravity that eclipsed the rest completely. By the early 1970s, Brando was not just famous, he was cultural royalty, a figure whose reputation felt unchallengeable. He wasn't simply admired, he operated above scrutiny, wrapped in prestige and power. That reality made what unfolded next deeply unsettling and impossible to ignore. Late one night, Carol was jolted awake by a phone that refused to stop ringing. When she finally answered, the voice on the other end was instantly recognizable. Calm, confident, almost playful. He spoke as if a personal bond already existed, as though familiarity had been assumed without consent. His words hovered in a disturbing space, drifting past admiration and into something that felt invasive, suggestive, and uninvited. Carol ended the call with politeness intact, but the unease refused to fade. By morning, that discomfort hardened into shock when she discovered the conversation had already taken on a new life. It had been reframed, repeated, and shared publicly in a way that implied closeness she never agreed to and never encouraged. When questions surfaced, Brando waved it away with humor, presenting her reaction as exaggerated and unnecessary. That response drew a sharp line. For Carol, this was no longer about one late-night call. It was about control, about having her story reshaped, her boundaries ignored, and her voice dismissed without permission. From that moment on, she made a quiet but permanent decision. No explanations, no public drama. Their paths would never cross again, and that resolve never cracked. Cary Grant, elegance used as a weapon. To the public, Cary Grant represented polish, charm, and effortless sophistication. He was held up as the definition of refinement, a figure whose image felt carefully protected and universally admired. But behind closed doors, Carol encountered a very different reality, one that clashed sharply with that flawless reputation. At a high-profile industry event, what should have been nothing more than a polite exchange quickly turned uncomfortable. A simple remark about her work, the kind meant to acknowledge effort and achievement, was met with something cold and calculated. Instead of curiosity or good humor, she was met with a public dismissal, delivered just loud enough to sting and just subtle enough to avoid immediate confrontation. It wasn't constructive feedback. It wasn't even open criticism. It was exposure, designed to undermine rather than engage. As the conversation continued out of her earshot, with her success framed as luck instead of talent, Carol understood the intent clearly. This was not careless talk. The humiliation was deliberate, precise, and meant to diminish her standing in the room. She walked away composed, her expression controlled, but the impact settled deep and stayed there. Years later, when opportunities arose that would have placed her alongside him again, she declined without pause. Not out of resentment, but out of principle. For Carol, respect was never optional, and once it was taken away, it could not be reclaimed or renegotiated. Lorne Michaels, the door closed without a meeting. Carol Burnett never appeared on Saturday Night Live, and that absence was never accidental. To the public, it might have seemed like a curious gap, but behind the scenes, the reason was far more revealing. During the height of her career, at a time when her influence on comedy was undeniable and far-reaching, her name was quietly circulated as a possible guest. What followed never reached her in an official way, but the message traveled clearly enough. She was dismissed as outdated. Her style of comedy was labeled incompatible with the future. Her presence was rejected without discussion, explanation, or dialogue. Carol never addressed the decision publicly. She didn't push back, didn't demand answers, and didn't ask for reconsideration. Instead, she stepped away with quiet awareness, understanding that some doors are not guarded by evolving standards or creative vision, but by insecurity and ego. Years passed, and the show became a cultural institution of its own. Yet decades later, when Carol was asked whether she regretted never stepping onto that stage, her response carried no resentment and no hesitation. There was only certainty. She had already built something lasting, something original, something undeniable. Her legacy was established on her own terms, and she never needed permission from anyone else to prove its value. Harvey Korman, When Admiration Turned Inward. Of all the professional relationships in Carol's life, this one cut differently, striking closer to home than any public slight ever could. Harvey Korman was never viewed as an opponent or rival. He was a collaborator, a trusted partner, someone she genuinely believed shared appreciation for the rare platform they had built together through years of shared work and success. That belief fractured during what should have been an ordinary rehearsal. Tension crept in quietly at first, disguised as irritation over timing and logistics. But as voices sharpened and patience thinned, it became clear that this was not about scheduling or creative disagreement. The frustration turned personal, and resentment surfaced without restraint, exposing a deeper wound that had been left unspoken for far too long. What emerged was a feeling of being overshadowed, of comparison instead of collaboration. The words spoken in that moment carried weight, and once released, they could not be pulled back or softened. Even when an apology eventually followed, Carol recognized a difficult truth. Something essential had shifted. They continued to work together professionally, delivering performances as expected and honoring their commitments, but the connection they once shared, built on mutual trust and warmth, never fully returned. The partnership survived. The friendship did not. Joe Hamilton, Betrayal without applause. The most painful chapter of Carol's life did not unfold under studio lights or in front of cameras, but within the walls of her own home. Joe Hamilton was not just her husband, he was her producer, her manager, and the person trusted to safeguard her creative future. Instead of protecting it, he quietly repositioned himself as the one in control, shifting ownership in ways she never agreed to. When Carol learned that her ideas had been legally separated from her name, the realization hit with crushing force. The devastation was not rooted in contracts or technicalities, but in the mindset behind them. It revealed a belief that her work could exist independently of her voice, her identity, and her authorship, a betrayal that cut far deeper than paperwork ever could. As the marriage unraveled, more truths surfaced, each one heavier than the last. There was no dramatic confrontation, no explosive moment that ended everything at once. Instead, it became a slow collapse, marked by drawn-out legal disputes, emotional fatigue, and the steady erosion of trust. When it was finally over, Carol did not pursue retaliation or public vindication. She made a quieter, firmer choice. She closed the door completely. Some betrayals do not require confrontation or spectacle. They require distance, boundaries, and the resolve to walk away for good. Carol Burnett gave the world laughter, but laughter did not shield her from harm. These experiences did not harden her. They clarified her boundaries. She learned when to walk away, when silence was stronger than argument, when dignity mattered more than reconciliation. And perhaps that quiet strength is the most powerful legacy she ever left behind. If this story moved you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, subscribe for more untold Hollywood histories, and see you on the next one.